Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college football. Week 2 is upon us, and we got ourselves a pivotal Mountain West showdown between the San Jose State Spartans and the Air Force Falcons this Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain in Colorado Springs. It's going to be a fun matchup, and we most definitely can't wait for that. First and foremost, before we do get into the week 2 game preview, just want to say thanks to all of the positive feedback that we've got, all the player interviews that we've conducted, the week 1 game preview as well with Sacramento State's Jack Freeman. Got lots of positive feedback with that. And we're going to keep the show running. Week 2, we're just getting started here. So we're going to keep the content rolling. And we most definitely got ourselves a good matchup this weekend between the Spartans and the Falcons. And we got another guest on the podcast that knows Falcon football, basketball, Falcon athletics very well. So let's bring him on in. A prominent voice within Air Force athletics, the radio play-by-play voice for Falcon football and basketball, the host of the Coaches Show with football head coach Troy Calhoun and basketball head coach Joe Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to bring on Jim Arthur. Jim, thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you today?
Good, Nick. I'm fine. I'm looking forward to Saturday with conference opener, as you mentioned, and eagerly looking forward to see how these two teams come out and play. Conference opener for both teams, and like you said, very important game very early in the season.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think it's just kind of interesting. Week 2, we already got ourselves a conference game. Interesting scheduling spot because both the Falcons and the Spartans had a week 1 non-conference matchup versus an FCS opponent. And then week 3, they go right back to non-conference play. Interesting scheduling spot. It's obviously a very important game early on in the season here, which I think is pretty significant with all the unknowns still heading into week 2.
Well, with only 7 conference games for each team, because everybody's playing either Oregon State or Washington State, you have one less game, I think, to make an impression, right? And I think for these two teams, the ability to come out with a win all of a sudden kind of puts you at the top, and everybody's got to do a little bit of chasing early on, which I don't think is a bad thing. If you win the game, if you lose the game, that's a different story.
So let's get into the San Jose State versus Air Force matchup that's going to be taking place this Saturday in Colorado Springs. First and foremost, I think the coaching matchup is just absolutely fascinating. You got 2 respectable and veteran head coaches and Troy Calhoun. Obviously, you talked to him a bunch. And Ken Niumatalolo, who I know you're probably very familiar with during his time at Navy, 15 years at Navy, over 11 bowl bids at the academy over there as well. And what really just attracts my eye in this matchup, not only are they great football coaches, but I bet you could talk about this with Troy Calhoun, and that is, they're probably just great individuals, great leaders, and, they care about their football team, but also they care about the individuals on the, off the field as well.
I'm a big fan of Coach Niumatalolo with his time at Navy. He's one of my favorite coaches. He's just a good, solid guy. And we would talk once a year when we were doing coaching segments, and I just enjoyed the talk. He was refreshing. He was candid and has universal respect, I think, in college football. And it's great to see him back on a sideline, but especially back as a head coach.
Obviously entering his first year at San Jose State. A lot of changes between both of these football teams this year, a lot of inexperience, I would say. Air Force, one of the more inexperienced teams in the country, along with the Spartans. And of course, Air Force runs the triple option. And, a lot of people might consider it as eye candy. A lot of people don't like it all so much. Everybody has their own opinion on it. I personally love it. You must love calling a game for it. I'll tell you that much. Do you get fooled by it every once in a while there with the old dive and, the pitch outside with the sweep?
Not as much as I used to, and the reason for that is because the dive now is predetermined. There's no more fake, so to speak, with the dive. The fullback is either going to get it on a predetermined call or he's not going to get it. There's no more reading as much on the line when the fullback gets to the line, and that's option number one. That's kind of been done away with. So not as much as I used to, but boy, in the days when we had quarterbacks who really ran the true triple option, you really had to pay a lot of attention.
Going into this matchup, I know you're still doing your homework on the Spartans, and obviously you know your Falcons very well, but I think there's still some questions to be answered here. Obviously, San Jose State, they're still working out the kinks within their offense with the spread and shred offense with offensive coordinator Craig Stutzman. No secret that he's going to want to air it out versus that Falcons pass defense. And then we all know what Air Force is all about. They're going to want to chew clock. Ball control and time of possession here, I think, is going to be crucial. And I have to say, Jim, the last two matchups between the Spartans and the Falcons, the last two matchups have happened in San Jose, but they've been some pretty good ones. The Spartans had a 3-point lead at halftime. Air Force ultimately won that game last year. I know you were in San Jose. And then going back to 2020, the Spartans won the time of possession battle and they won that game 14-6. So I think we're going to have a good one on our hands despite all the unknowns.
Well, I think we will too. Obviously, as we mentioned, there's a lot at stake. I think too the fact that Ken Niumatalolo knows the Air Force offense really, really well, and so Air Force will throw in a little bit of a wrinkle here and there, but you know what you're going to get when you see Air Force. You're going to get primarily the fullback. You're going to get a stingy defense. You're going to get an Air Force team that if they're running the ball well, they're going to kind of lure the San Jose State team or any other team they play to sleep a little bit with that run and then try to go over the top. And I think for Air Force, and I mentioned this to Troy Calhoun a couple of months ago, I said, how do you scout San Jose State? And he just looked at me and he laughed. And he knew exactly what I meant because you really can't look at last year's tape. And obviously, Coach Ken is not bringing the option to San Jose. Now, he does have some plays option based in the playbook. We saw that certainly against Sacramento State. But by and large, as you mentioned, it's going to be a passing attack. So they've really had to do a deep dive on a couple of things on game one against Sacramento State. And also, you mentioned your offensive coordinator, and they went really back and looked at where he came from, what he liked to do at other schools when he was coaching there. So that's really been the bulk, I think, of their preparation and continues to be the bulk as they get ready for Saturday.
And another thing heading into this 2024 matchup between the Spartans and the Falcons is two new quarterbacks that are going to be commanding their respective offenses. Air Force, obviously rolling with John Boucher. We saw him last week versus Merrimack. You were there at Falcon Stadium calling the game. I'm interested to get your assessment on John Boucher because, even though you guys beat Merrimack 21-6, I think like any team in week one, I think you're still trying to work out, the kinks within the offense, a lot of new players. I didn't think it helped that Dylan Carson, the fullback who was expected to get a lot of workload within the triple option this year had to exit that game early and did not return. So interested on your take here within, the triple option here with John Boucher. I think he's a really good quarterback. And I think, down the stretch down the road towards the season, I think he's going to be running this offense crisp. But, week two, I'm interested to see your assessment and your evaluation on the win versus Merrimack.
Well, a couple of things. Game ones are always kind of funny in a lot of different ways. For Air Force, it was particularly interesting because you have so many guys who hadn't played and taken a snap. You really didn't know what you were going to get. Boucher played a little last year toward the end of the year, and he did all right in his first game. He'll be better in the second game. They played pretty much close to the vest in terms of play calling. They kind of kept their offense pretty vanilla. You didn't see any pitches out there. So I think you may see a little more of that come Saturday as everybody just gets settled in. Look, even after Saturday, I don't know if you're really going to have any answers on either team. I think it's going to take really several games for teams to settle in, to figure out their identity. I mean, who are they really? Who are their leaders? What do they like to do? What's their strength? What's their weakness? And I think both teams are still in the process of really defining that and trying to figure that out. Boucher's a very good thrower. He's a junior, and he's going to get better with every snap he takes, with every game he plays. And so week one was just that, week one. It helps. You got a taste of it. Now you try to move forward and improve on what you did last week.
Yeah, and I think I can say the same about Emmett Brown, San Jose State starting quarterback. Competition heading into fall camp, ultimately won the QB1 spot. But making his first career start, there was some things where you're like, okay, you can work on that, and you'll evaluate that in the film room. He did have 298 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. San Jose State started trailing 14-0, really dealt with some adversity. And I got to talk to Emmett Brown personally, after the Thursday matchup. And, he was like, hey, things weren't perfect, but we're going to work things out. And so I think you're spot on. Every week one team, you want to win the game, but of course, nothing is going to run on all cylinders. And I don't think maybe for any team, they might not be satisfied whether they win or lose coming out of this one, despite it being a Mountain West clash. Obviously, with any matchup versus the Air Force Falcons, I think ball control and time of possession and who wins that battle is obviously essential. But I'm interested on your take here on just the contrast in styles, because San Jose State was a running team last year with Kyrie Robinson and Quali Conley. And this year, it's no secret they want to air it out. So is San Jose State is probably going to air it out in this game, but at the same time, we all know that possessions versus Air Force are very critical. When you have the ball, you have to score points, because we saw it last year in the matchup with the Falcons and the Spartans. Air Force was able in that third quarter, when they were trailing, have the ball for 10 minutes in the third quarter, score a touchdown, and then there goes all the momentum for the Spartan offense. So ball control obviously essential, but contrast in styles, I think we're in for a fascinating game.
Well, I think so too. And you're right about the possessions. You probably have two less possessions a game if you're the opposition facing Air Force. So then pressure, I think, falls on your defense. How quickly can an opposing defense get the Air Force offense off the field? How can you knock them off schedule? They want to gain 4 or 5 yards on first down and then move the ball accordingly after that. If you can knock them off schedule a little bit and put them in a second and long, especially a third and long situation, really that's an advantage to San Jose State. And for Air Force, look, they've looked at the tape and they've seen Brown, they've seen Nick Nash, they know obviously what the Spartans can do. And they've got to be able to kind of make sure they stay on the sidelines. They can't hurt you if they're watching their defense. And that's really, really important for Air Force. And it's a simple game when you look at it and approach it from that sense. But at the same time, now you have to be able to do it. Air Force showed some bursts offensively last week, but look, it's a brand new offensive line. They're going to be without a couple of people on Saturday. So we'll see how it plays out. If you're Air Force, you have to keep San Jose State's offense over there on the sideline. You really do. The Air Force defense is going to be tested. San Jose State, you're right. They want to air it out. They also know, yeah, we may get 1 or 2 less possessions. I don't know if that puts any kind of pressure on them to score when they have the ball or not. But we all know, certainly, that when they do have the ball, they really want to make some hay and put a little bit of pressure. The option offense is not a come-from-behind offense. If you can put Air Force in that situation, that's certainly to your advantage.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jim. And I just want to say, you talked about Nick Nash. You threw him into the analysis. I already see you're already doing your homework on him after his 10 catches, 177 yards. I think that's going to be maybe the premier matchup of this game. Whoever's opposite of Nick Nash. I know a talented corner in Trey Taylor's not on the team anymore, but you get an experienced cornerback back on the team in Jamari Bellamy. And I think Camby Goff for safety help is also going to be in there as well, just trying to bother Nick Nash in any way. I think those two guys on the Air Force defense are just going to try to cause all kinds of havoc for Nash. And I think maybe for the Air Force defense, try to minimize Nash as much as possible and maybe let some of the other complementary pieces beat you. But I think whoever's lined up against Nick Nash, that's going to be the matchup I'm looking for this weekend.
Well, and you mentioned Bellamy, and he'll be one of the guys. Trey Williams will certainly be another guy, depending on what side of the field Nash is on. Air Force likes to play man to man. It allows them to put an extra guy, not put, but to get an extra guy and put him somewhere else on the defense and maybe put a little more pressure on the quarterback. Because if you give Brown time to throw, that's going to be a challenge. Then you're in a lot of trouble. So you're going to have to put some pressure on Brown, and you're going to have to do it with some younger guys, with some brand new linebackers, and you need to figure out how you're going to pressure Brown. You won't do it from the same place every time. You won't even do it every time. Sometimes you're going to drop maybe 6 or 7. Other times you want to rush 6 or 7 and give them different looks, obviously. That's going to be the key, the kinds of looks that Air Force gives him and the kind of adjustments he makes along the way. And then if you're San Jose State, and if he is under duress, do you keep an extra back in to give him some time to block a little bit more? So he's got another second or two to scan the field. That's where the chess match, I really think, kind of comes into play, because Nash will hurt you if you give Brown time to throw the football. And if you don't, maybe you take Nash a little bit out of the game, but he's such a good football player. You're not going to eliminate him. He's going to make his catches. You need to make sure that you don't allow a lot of yards after the catch. It's always a big statistic I really like. Got to be careful with that. But that's why there's a lot of intrigue, I think, because of this matchup.
I think, the chess matchup that you just talked about, you're going to have an elite one with Kenny Amatalolo, of course, Troy Calhoun. Jim, before we close things out, I know one of us are going to get a win, one of us are going to get a loss. And more importantly here, sure, the coaches and all the players are going to be satisfied with the win. But I think more importantly here, with both of these teams being some of the more inexperienced teams in the Mountain West, I think they just want to see comfortability within their respective offenses. We talked about it. Air Force is still working it out, as well as San Jose State. I think the line of scrimmage is going to be essential in this one as well, especially the way Sac State was able to dominate that as well. But is that what you're really looking for in this game beyond, just, what the scoreboard is indicating?
I think that it's another opportunity for the young guys on both sides, right? To get some experience, to get some snaps. And you know that your club isn't going to gel after 2 weeks because of how young you are. And you want that gelling to happen as fast as it can. Never happens as fast as you would like if you're a head coach. So it's another game. It's another opportunity. You get to work on some things. You'll expand your playbook on both offense and on defense because of who you're playing. So yeah, two things. A, you want to win, and B, can you win and can you see a little bit of cohesiveness now start to come into play for your squad? Can Air Force see that on its offensive line? Can Air Force see that with its linebacker play? Can Air Force be a little more fluid running the football when they need to? Will we see Air Force be a little more of an option team trying to get to the outside? I mean, these are the things that I think Troy Calhoun and his coaching staff are certainly talking about. And that's one thing that they will look for. But at the same time, look, it's still a game. You have one less conference game. So it's really important if you can get that win early and get on top early. And at the same time, see a little growth among your football players. If you can see that and get a win, that's a double bonus right there.
Well, it's going to be an awesome matchup between the San Jose State Spartans and the Air Force Falcons. Can't wait for the matchup, Jim. I know that you will be at Falcon Stadium calling that game live. Where can people find you? Because I know you're pretty busy. It's a busy time of year with your broadcasting schedule. You do Air Force football and men's basketball. Where can people tune in to your radio feed? And I know you got yourself a terrific partner with Jesse Kurtz, who is just a terrific ambassador for the Mountain West.
Jesse's the best. Every Saturday is Christmas when we get a chance to hang out together. And you can find our games on our app, our KVOR app, and you can listen to our broadcast. And our broadcast will begin at 2 Pacific time, and then the kickoff 4 Pacific time at Falcon Stadium against San Jose State.
Well, there you have it. Jim Arthur, the radio play-by-play voice for Air Force Falcon football and basketball. Jim, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy week to come on and talk this pivotal Mountain West showdown between the Spartans and the Falcons. Looking forward to crossing paths later on in, maybe the basketball season as well, whether we see you at the Mountain West tournament in March or whether that game versus the Falcons and the Spartans at the event center in San Jose. So thank you so much for coming on and looking forward to crossing paths later on.
All right, Nick, nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me on your show.
All right. There you have it. Once again, I am your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.